Okay, a very, very good morning to all of you. A warm welcome to AIOC 2021, the 79th virtual conference. I am Himay, your hall coordinator, and I welcome all our judges, all the doctors here. Uh, Judges, we are all ready to go. We are bang on time. So may I request our judges to please invite the first speaker.
Hello.
Dr. Rajan, go ahead.
Yeah.
The
First
first
of all,
speaker of the day will be multifocal intraocular lens implantation in pediatric eyes by Minu Parakar.
All right, and we are going to be a little...
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me,
Yes.
sir.
Yes.
Sir, I had requested Dr. Rajan Gupta, the moderator of the session, to allow me to present first because I have to go to the hall, Shield Hall. I have a simultaneous...
No problem. What is your name and what is your paper? If you
My
mention
name is Dr. Bharti Kashyap. My name is Dr. Bharti Kashyap. My paper is comparison of 3 preloaded IOL visual outcome. And
okay, 1 second. For all the judges here, like it will be paper FP 550. So we will be hearing the first paper, which will be FP 550.
Dr. Bharti, you will be hearing a buzzer when your presentation is going on. So when you hear a buzzer, that is an indication that you have to wind up in 30 seconds.
so the
That
talk,
is really
talk is 6 minutes.
6 minutes.
Okay.
So 1 minute before your talk gets over, we have a buzzer. Dr.
Okay.
Bharti, you can go on, please.
Okay, sir. Sir, Rajan... 3 preloaded. Full slide. Good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My topic is comparative analysis of visual outcome and implantation behavior of 3 preloaded monofocal hydrophobic acrylic IOLs, a 6 months result. So I have no financial interest, and the purpose was to evaluate 6 months visual outcome and intraoperative implantation behavior of 3 preloaded monofocal hydrophobic acrylic IOL, Ozonix Vivinex ICER, Technis iTech PCB00, Clarion CNA0T0. The method, this was a non-randomized and comparative study of 150 eyes, 75 patients with cataract and no other ocular or neurological comorbidities undergoing cataract surgeries, who were divided into 3 groups of preloaded aspheric hydrophobic acrylic IOLs. Group 1, Ozonated Vivinex ICERT. Group 2, Technis PCB00 iTech. And Group 3, Clarion CNA0T0. The Group 1 had 50 eyes, screw type preloaded IOL system, Ozonated Vivinex ICERT. Group 2, 50 eyes piston type preloaded IOL system, PCB00 iTech. And Group 3, 50 eyes CO carbon dioxide powered delivery injector, Clarion CNA0T0. Single surgeon, similar operating time and conditions. All eyes underwent clear corneal phacoemulsification. Incision width size was measured by Apasamy incision gauge AA2102, and it was measured after phaco and after IOL implantation. Any complication arising during insertion of IOL were recorded and analyzed. The parameters assessed with per operative parameters, wound stretch and unfolding time of optics and haptics inside the eye. Post-operative parameters, 180 days post-op were post-op UCBA, BCBA, surgically induced astigmatism, and grades of glistening. The inclusion criteria were age between 50 to 75, corneal endothelial cell count greater than 2000, power of IOL implanted were 20 diopter to 23.5 diopter. In the bag implantation was done, the exclusion criteria were previous ocular trauma or intraocular surgery, irregular astigmatism, corneal dystrophy, history of glaucoma or intraocular inflammation, macular disease or retinopathy, neuroophthalmic disease, and intraoperative or postoperative complications. The above table shows difference of the distribution of the gender among the 3 groups was non-significant, P 0.606. The above table graph shows distribution of age is non-significant among the group P02. The three groups have comparable pre-operative data for a spherical equivalent, keratometry, astigmatism, axial length, anterior chamber depth, and UDVA. Comparison of intraocular lens power among the three groups was comparable. The pair t-test was used for intra-group pre versus post-operative comparison, and independent t-test was used for intergroup comparison for change. This is the comparison of post-implantation incision width and change in incision width pre versus post among the three groups. The post hoc analysis was done, multiple comparison, and it was found that the pre-implantation incision width is same for all the group, mean 2.25. The intergroup comparison of post-implantation incision width and change in width, pre-implantation versus post-implantation, are significant. The change in incision width of group 3 Clarion CNA0T0 is significantly lower, 0.06, as compared to group 1 Vivinex ICERT 0.16 and group 2 Technis PCB00 0.11. And the post-implantation incision width was, you can see, I'm going back, was also significantly less in group 3 2.31 as compared to the group 2 2.36 and group 1 2.41. So this is the table showing comparison of difference of unfolding time of optics and haptics inside the eye, and it was found significant. And when the multiple comparison was done, it showed that unfolding time of optic and haptic inside eye showed significantly less unfolding time of optic and haptics in group 3 Clarion CNA0T0. When we compared the surgical induced astigmatism 180 days post-op, we found that the difference among the three groups was not significant. P is 0.280. This is the table showing statistical analysis for difference in post-op visual acuity in three groups, and we found the change in uncorrected distance visual acuity and corrected distance visual acuity was comparable at 180 days post-op among the three groups, and the difference is statistically non-significant. The 180 days post-op group 1 had, when we compared glistening, 1 case of mild glistening, group 2 had 2 cases of mild glistening, and 3 had no case of glistening. Glistening was comparable among the three groups. P was 0.3. So conclusion, what this study adds is the intergroup comparison among three groups showed significantly lower post-implantation incision width in group 3 with CO2 powered autonomy injector as compared to group 1 Vivinex ICERT with screw type injector and group 2 with piston type injector. The change in incision width of group 3 was significantly lower as compared to group 1 and group 2, but there was a operative ease also in unfolding time of optics and haptics inside the eye in Clarion, the group 3. But the impact on SIA was not significant, and 6 months visual outcome was also comparable among the three groups. There was just a ease in the intraoperative period. Thank you so much.
Well done, Dr. Bharti. You finished your presentation well in time. Thank you. And I request our judges to please take this forward. Thank you. Sir, you need to unmute your mic, Dr. Rajan Gupta.
So, sir, can you allow me, sir, please, to go to the Shields Hall for my next presentation?
Yeah. Ma'am, just can I have one question, please?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, there was an incidence of haptic breakage in implantation of these lenses.
Sir, there was no such case. In the 50 eyes was in each group, and in those eyes, there was no such case.
Was there a difference in the implantation when you implant the preloaded and other lenses? Was the technical ease was there? More ease? Or
all the three were preloaded.
Okay.
All the three were preloaded, but the group 3 Clarion autonomy has a CO2 power delivery. So it was the company does lot of advertisement that it is very good, this and that. But when we compared that, we found that yes, there is an intraoperative ease in delivery because it is CO2 powered. It unfolds very nicely and quickly. The unfolding time is comparatively, statistically significantly less in group 3, that is Clarion, as compared to the ITEC PCB00 and this group 1 Vivinex. But this unfolding time is very nice, and immediately it unfolds because it is CO2 powered, and the post implantation stretch is also significantly less, but we found that there is no impact, statistically significant impact on visual acuity and SIA.
For want of time, I would like to note that the unfolding of an IOL is not only based on how you inject it, but it's also based on the material. One material tends to unfold faster, and other material might be, unfolding it much slower.
The Clarion was significantly less time it took in unfolding.
Yeah, that's the only thing, but it won't solve the. It is no comparison between two different types of lenses unless you have compared the injection using an injector or automated injector for the same Clarion lens. We cannot compare Technis unfolding with Clarion unfolding because they are two different materials and the process of manufacture is.
Dr. Bharti, one last question for you. Do you need a special? Do you need a special injector for this?
Yes, it is there is a special injector inbuilt with in the CO2 delivery system. But then actually the company propagates a lot that this is good. So we compared, because we usually use Vivinax and other material and other lenses, but we found that it is intraoperative ease, but there is no significant impact on visual acuity. So our purpose was to evaluate, like there is a lot of marketing among for the lenses, but we found that it is same, result is same.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bharti. We now go back to Dr. Minu Tavakkal, who will be talking about multifocal intraocular lens implantation in pediatric eyes. Dr. Minu, please.
Yes, sir. Shall I share my screen?
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah, if you can go full screen, Dr. Minu.
Yes. So good morning. My paper is on multifocal intraocular lens implantation in pediatric eyes. So why this study? There are only limited studies about multifocal IOL implantation in children. The accurate IOL power calculation is difficult, and there is high risk of postoperative inflammation, posterior capsular opacification, and secondary glaucoma in this age group. So the aim is to study the merits and demerits of implanting a multifocal IOL, to analyze the visual improvement, behavior of lens inside the eye, reaction of eye after surgery and possible complications, and to assess the visual performance of the child and quality of life. 21 eyes of 14 patients in the age group of 1 to 14 were studied. No IOL is implanted in less than 1 year in our institution. The IOL power calculation were done either by immersion ultrasound biometry with SRK2 formula or optical biometry with the Barrett's Universal 2 formula. In children of 5 years of elder, biometry-derived IOL power were implanted, and in less than 5 years of age, it was undercorrected by 10%. The average follow-up period was 11 months post-surgery, and part-time occlusion was done in all cases. Data analyzed were visual acuity, near vision, contrast sensitivity, and stereopsis were done only in Weber children. Slit lamp examination for IOL positioning, IOL glistening, fundus examination, IOP. A questionnaire for assessing the quality of life after cataract surgery were prepared based on Cardiff Visual Ability Questionnaire for children. It was answered by parents, and it could assess the quality of life of even 1-year-old child. Procedure. After anterior and posterior capsular axis, a single-piece hydrophobic multifocal IOL was inserted between the two leaves of the capsular axis. Coming to results, 21 eyes of 14 patients, out of which 7 were bilateral. Axial length mean was 22.53 mm. Secondary IOL implantation was done in 3 cases. Average multifocal IOL power was 23.07 diopter. No fundus, no retinal pathology were noted in any of the cases. Post-op uncorrected visual acuity for distance and near improved in 100% of eyes. The average logMAR under uncorrected visual acuity for distance was 0.3 and that of near was 0.8. The logMAR mean of pre-op distant vision was 0.8 and that of post-op distant vision was 0.3, and the difference was statistically significant. The logMAR mean of pre-op near vision was 0.5 and that of post-op near vision was 0.3, and again the difference was statistically significant. 66.7% had post-surgery uncorrected distant visual acuity of 612 or better. 73.3 had uncorrected near visual acuity of N8 or better, and the rest had less improvement, maybe because of amblyopia in our study. There was no correlation of visual improvement with age noted in our study. The average post-surgery contrast sensitivity was 1.5. Stereopsis attained in all Werber children. No IOL degeneration was found, and quality of life was excellent. Post-op complications, 42.8% had transient rise of IOP immediate post-surgery, which became normal within 1 month post-surgery. 14.3% had visual axis opacification in spite of posterior capsulorhexis, which may be due to inadequate anterior vitrectomy. No case of post-op uveitis were noted in spite of not using systemic steroid, which may be due to refined techniques, intensive topical steroid coverage, and frequent monitoring. Coming to discussion, Ledo et al. Studied primary IOL implantation in 11 days to 17 years of age, and 75% improved to 0.3 or better. Congdon et al. Studied primary IOL implantation with glass correction in less than 2 years of age, and 40% improved to 0.3 or better, and he found IOL with glass correction can give better visual outcome. Infant aphakia treatment study compared IOL with glass correction with aphakia with contact lens. No difference in visual acuity at 1 year of age was noted, but there was high complication rate with IOL in less than 6 months of age. Our study was based on IATS results and 100% improved. Jacobi et al. Studied multifocal IOL implantation in 2 to 14 years of age, but IOL degeneration was found in 16.6% of patients. In our study, no IOL degeneration was noted, which may be because of the refined techniques we use now. A previous study in our institution on unifocal IOL in 1 to 10 years of age, the average follow-up period was 41 months, but the prevalence of amblyopia was 55.6%. But in our study, the average follow-up period was 11 months, but the prevalence of amblyopia was only less. The limitations of the study were non-uniform follow-up, moderate sample size, near vision and contrast sensitivity hard to assess in young children, and difficulty in extracting qualitative information from children like Claire. So to conclude, in pediatric group, the compliance with the spectacles and contact lens is doubtful. There is non-optimal use of bifocals and high requirement of near vision for daily activities, which all can cause amblyopia. And the solution for this is multifocal IOL implantation, which can provide high degree of visual improvement, inbuilt amblyopia therapy, reasonable contrast sensitivity and stereopsis, and long-term postoperative complication rate appears to be nil. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Minu. You're well in time. May I request the judges to please go on with the question answers. Thank you.
Minu, it was a very nice presentation.
Thank you, sir.
But there is a question. The thing is, you have mentioned that multifocal IOL is amblyopia treatment.
Yes, sir.
Inbuilt amblyopia treatment. Why not? If you keep a single vision lens also, the patients are corrected and the visual input starts working.
So in children, in younger children, they are more concentrated in the near works. They'll be having indoor activities. So near vision is more important for these children. So if you are implanting a multifocal IOLs, the near vision is corrected. So they don't have to use a bifocal lens for that.
No, you have done this research work on the background. I don't know for sure. Is there any report of bifocal or a multifocal lens is better in terms of amblyopia improvement in children? Have you seen any other paper published?
Only one paper of Jacobi et al. In which multifocal IOL was implanted in 2 to 14 years of age. Only that I got. And there the visual improvement had occurred.
Okay.
All right.
Doctor-
Can we now go ahead with the next speaker, please? I request the judges to invite the next speaker.
One more question. Dr. Minu.
Sir, we are out of time for questions.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. No issue.
A kind request to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thermal comparison of torsional and longitudinal phacoemulsification using infrared recording. Ms. Keertana Muralidharan.
Yes, sir. I'll share my screen. A very good morning to all. I'm Dr. Keertana, and my topic is on thermal comparison of torsional and longitudinal phacoemulsification using infrared recording. I have no financial disclosure to report. Thermal imaging involves the detection of infrared radiation emitted from an object, and it is non-invasive for both surgeon and patient. Heat distribution analysis is important for both preventing and estimating possible damage inside the eye and on its surface. So very little information is available in the recent literature about the impact of different modalities of phacoemulsification on ocular surface temperature, and most of the studies available are done in vitro under laboratory conditions. Our aim was to study the change in surface temperatures during torsional and longitudinal phacoemulsification and to assess its relation to intraoperative parameters. We had done a prospective observational study. 89 eyes, age group 55 to 65 years, undergoing cataract surgery divided into two groups, and who underwent torsional phacoemulsification and who underwent longitudinal phacoemulsification. A calibrated thermal camera was kept at a uniform distance of 50 centimeters from the eye for video recordings of the surface temperature during phacoemulsification. And frame analysis was done using the camera software to detect the maximum surface temperature reached. As you can see here, the one which is in blue color is the eye, and this is the phaco probe. And you can clearly see the tip heating up, and we are recording the temperature using a pointing marker. Statistical analysis of the results were done, and coming to results. First, we compared the tip temperatures in torsional versus longitudinal, and even though the temperatures were a bit high, bit on the higher range in torsional, there was no statistical difference between the tip temperature when we compared the two modalities. But, however, the time taken to reach the maximum temperature was significantly differed in both. It was rather slow in torsional phacoemulsification, that is 96.66 seconds, as compared to longitudinal, which is only 73.78 seconds. And this difference was significant statistically. We also noticed that in torsional phacoemulsification, 40% of the eyes showed a limbal rise of temperature, while in longitudinal mode, only 4% showed limbal rise of temperature, which is rather significant. And we also compared the temperature of the tip, that is in Kelman versus balanced tip, and the difference, even though the difference between the temperatures was not statistically significant, Kelman tip showed a rather higher temperature, so lower temperature are observed with balanced tip. We also calculated the cumulative dissipated energy, and it was rather low in torsional. However, there is no correlation between the maximum surface temperatures observed and the CDE in either modes. Coming to discussion, Han, Baike et al. Compared the torsional mode and longitudinal mode under the same display console power settings and found that torsional phacoemulsification produced less heat than longitudinal phacoemulsification at every experiment. While Na Ryu et al. Compared the heat production of 3 different phacoemulsification machines, and they found that torsional with phacoemulsification generated less heat than longitudinal phacoemulsification. And Bokwan Jun et al. Evaluated the change and difference in corneal surface, incision and handpiece temperature during longitudinal and torsional modes. And incision temperature was influenced by ultrasound modality and was significantly lower with the torsional. And Jamie Zacharias et al. Studied the thermal profiles of 3 phacotip designs in simulated surgical conditions, and the balanced tip produced minimal thermal peaks in all the tests. In our study also, balanced tip showed lesser temperature, even though the difference between the temperatures were not significant statistically. And Yu et al. Compared a modified phacoemulsification tip with an established microtip in terms of temperature, and the 2 different bare tips showed no significant difference in thermogenesis. However, the balanced tip with sleeve produced lower temperatures at 100%, and torsional power and better efficiency than Kelman tip. And To conclude, in our study, temperatures were found to be raised significantly in torsional phacoemulsifications at the limbus in 40% of cases, and time taken to reach the maximum temperature significantly differs in both, and temperature rise is rather a slow process in torsional phacoemulsification. The tip temperatures in both modalities were comparable, and CDE has no correlation with the surface temperature, while the use of balance tip decreases maximum temperature reached. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Can we have questions, please? Judges, can we have the questions, please?
Yeah. Did you use the Kelman tip and the balance tip in the same phaco machine, or was it used in different phaco machines?
We used single phaco machine only, sir.
So is it Infinity or the Centurion?
Centurion, sir.
Okay.
Sir, you will excuse me, I have to go to the shield hall for my presentation. If you permit me for about 8-10 minutes.
Your name, sir?
Dr. Shroff. I am one of the judge here in Parson Hall.
No problem, sir. No problem, sir.
I'll join you again once my presentation is over.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. If others don't have any question, we will go to the next presentation, which will be on visual outcomes of bilateral implantation of extended depth focus lenses.
Dr. Kitana,
Yes,
but the phaco settings were the same in all of the tips, the phaco par, the vacuum and everything was the same settings, or the settings were different?
Settings were almost the same, sir, because we took only NS2, means similar grade cataracts, so we need not change the settings.
All the settings, phaco par and everything was the same. The surgeon was same or the surgeon was different?
Surgeon was same, OT was same, the timing was same, and all the settings, OT, temperature, everything settings were same, sir. That's why we compared. That's why we were able to compare.
Thank you. Judges, can we skip to the next paper?
Yes,
please?
sir.
Time.
Visual outcomes of bilateral implantation of Indian extended depth focus lens by Dr. Anchal Priya.
Okay.
Dr. Priya?
Yes, sir. I'm sharing my screen.
Dr. Archer, is everything okay with your internet?
Sir, is it visible? My screen is visible?
Not
My
yet.
press-
Priya, can you try to share the whole screen?
Dr. Achal, what we suggest that first you can turn on your presentation and then go to share screen, and then you can do that. Open your presentation and then you can go to share screen.
Are you login from tab?
Yes,
Lap-
sir.
और कैमरा ऑफ करके शेयर करें आप अगर टैब है तो.
Is Dr. Nidhi present?
Yeah, Dr. Nidhi was here some time back. She had a presentation at some other hall
Okay.
at the same time. Yeah, Dr. Nidhi is still here. Dr. Nidhi, can you please turn on your camera?
After one more speaker, I think she can give her.
Sir, my talk was there, sir. Dr. Kashyap. BP.
Yeah, very much there.
Okay.
Dr. Kashyap, very much there.
Good
Okay.
morning, sir. Good morning.
Judges, I have a small suggestion. Since doctor is facing some issue while sharing a screen, can we go with the next speaker and then we can invite her back when she's ready?
Yeah. We are doing that, sir. We are doing that.
Okay.
Dr. Goa Priya, are you there? Sundaram. Dr. Goa Priya, are you there?
Yeah, yes, sir, I'm there.
Okay, so please go ahead. Please share your screen. We're talking on analysis of IOL exchange in a tertiary eye care center.
Yes, sir. Sharing my screen. Good morning, everyone. Shall I start, sir?
Yes, please go ahead, madam.
Analysis of IOL exchange in a tertiary eye care center. No financial disclosure. The aim is to analyze the indications, complications, and surgical outcomes of IOL exchange in a tertiary eye care center. As we know, cataract surgery is the most common intraocular procedure performed worldwide. Advances both in the evolution of power and refinement in technique has made it safe and predictable. Nevertheless, situations arise in which explantation or exchange might be required. The evolution in the posterior chamber IOL designs have reduced the incidence of endothelial decompensation, which was associated with ACIOL and UGH syndrome, and changes in the biomaterials and manufacturing process have resulted in improvements, but calcifications are known to occur, and as a result, opacification have become a major cause of exchange also. Our methods included a retrospective case series of patients who underwent IOL exchange during the period 2017 to 2020 in a tertiary eye care setup. Cases where the IOL was repositioned or add-on IOL, aphakic patients were excluded, so also patients with incomplete case records. And the data was obtained from the review of case records, and the demographic data was collected, and data analyzed include the indication, time interval, additional surgery, the IOL types, the location and placement of the IOL pre and post-operatively, and the complications. And the visual outcome was analyzed post-operative, uncorrected, and best corrected at POD 1 month, 6 months, and at final follow. The biometry was done using the optical biometer, and surgery was performed by 3 senior surgeons, and the approach was determined by the surgeon based upon the complexity of the case and his own experience. And the interventions were, it was placed in the bag when the bag was intact, and sulcus implantation if support was adequate, and if it was inadequate, suture fixation, skill fixated iris claw lens was done. Post-operatively, they received a short course of topical antibiotics and steroids in tapering doses for 1 month, and they were examined on the first post-operative day, 1 month, 6 months, and at the end of the final follow. The statistical analysis include the age time interval between the initial surgery and the exchange pre and post-op visual acuity values. The data were expressed as mean plus or minus standard deviation. All the data was represented in logMAR values after converting the Snellens to logMAR, and a PAT t-test was used, and a p-value less than 0.05 was considered significant. The results, 100 eyes of patients who underwent IOL exchange for multiple indications, and the mean age group ranging from 50.73 plus or minus 19.2. There were higher proportion of males. And the common indication we found was decentered IOL in 36%, subluxated in 26%, and opacified IOL in 11%, and the exchange was done for myopic shift in 7%. And the duration ranged from, for decentered IOL, from 90.88 plus or minus 81.20, and the myopic shift had the longest duration from 140.57 plus or minus 63.13 months. And the commonest technique we found was 37% of iris claw lenses, and sulcus 3-piece in sulcus in 35%, and iris fixation in 14%, squirrel fixated in 9%, and IOL in bag in 5%. And the visual outcome for the cumulated group, the preoperative uncorrected visual acuity was 1.18 plus or minus 0.7, and best corrected was 0.74 plus or minus 0.67 logMAR units. On comparing the means with t-test, significant improvement of the mean BCVA by 0.43 plus or minus 0.36 logMAR unit from the preoperative to the final follow. And the complications pre-operative risk factor was zonular lysis and vitreous in anterior chamber, and pre-existing PC dehiscence in 12%. And intraoperatively, 69 cases required an anterior vitrectomy, and post-operatively secondary glaucoma in 13%. Coming to the subgroup analysis, these were the in decentered IOL, 36 cases, the mean age group was 49.14 plus or minus 20.37 years, and the commonest comorbidity was trauma followed by pseudoexfoliation, and there was a significant improvement of BCVA by 0.37 logMAR units. 26 cases subluxated with the mean age group ranging from 58.46 plus or minus 14.32 years, and PXF was the commonest comorbidity, and significant improvement of BCVA by 0.69. And 11 cases of opacified IOL, and the surgery age group was 60.55 plus or minus 5.75 years, and significant improvement of VCV by 0.66 logMAR units. Myopic shift, there are 7 cases were done, and they had the longest duration with the primary surgery to extend time was 140.57 plus or minus 63.13 months. In all cases, 3Ps was implanted in the sulcus, and significant improvement uncorrected by 0.76. As we know, IOL exchange has been commonly performed previously. However, the indications in the mid-80s and 90s was due to corneal decompensation, UGH decentration, and subluxation. In subsequent decades, the indication has been changed. However, from the initial implantation, the consistent indication has been decentration. In our own cohort, decentration was the most commonest, followed by subluxation and IOL opacification. And the significant risk factor we have found was PXF, especially for the indications of IOL exchange in our case series correlated well with the previous one, and 11 cases of opacified. Although data of initially implanted all IOL were not available, however, hydrophilic IOL were the more common causes, and myopic shift in 7 cases. They had the longest duration greater than 10 years and significant improvement in both uncorrected and best corrected. This remains a testimonial for the benefit of IOL exchange even when done after a decade. Our case series had fewer cases of post-refractive surprise, and anterior vitrectomy was needed in more than half of the cases. And the secondary glaucoma was observed in 13%, followed by vitreous hemorrhage and CME. However, vision-threatening complication like endophthalmitis was not seen. As we are coming to the limitation, as with most retrospective studies, complete details were not available, and details of the IOL used in the initial IOL power also was unavailable for some referred cases, and follow-up period being not uniform makes it difficult to determine and compare the long-term stability and complications. In conclusion, it was effective in patients with opacification or dislocation, and the outcome can be expected, especially in cases with no ocular. Our case series showed good outcome irrespective of the technique, with low rate of vision-threatening complications, and delay in intervention did not affect the final outcome. Thank you. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Can we have some question answers, please?
Yes, sir.
Which technique did you use for the IOL explant? Did you enlarge the incision or you cut the IOL in the back?
No, sir. Usually we try to dissect the IOL. If the haptics were difficult, the haptics were cut and left behind.
Okay, you didn't enlarge the incision, you did with the 2.8 mm incision. Or
No,
did you enlarge it?
Most of the cases we had iris claw implantation. So the section was mostly scleral.
More like an SICS, do you mean?
Yeah, because around 37% we had an SICS like.
Actually, basically, retrospective study, so maybe I think the technique may have been slightly different.
Yes, it was a retrospective case series, and surgery was done by 3 surgeons. So with the data analyzed, the most commonest we found was around iris claw implantation in 37% of cases out of the 100 cases.
So what was the incidence of change in the astigmatism pre and post-operatively after the surgery?
So that
what are the pre-op astigmatism and what are the post-op astigmatism after the exchange of the IOL?
No, that was not analyzed, sir. Only the best corrected thing by the.
All right. Can we invite the next speaker, please?
Is Dr. Anchal's presentation now?
Yes, sir.
Then please go ahead.
Please share the screen, Anchal.
Yes, sir. I'm doing that. Sir, is it visible now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Good morning to all. My topic for discussion is visual outcome of bilateral implantation of Indian extended depth of focus IOL. There is no financial interest received in this study. Modern cataract surgery has become more of a refractive procedure, with emmetropia being the target in most cases. Diffractive multifocal intraocular lenses provide 2 different foci for distance and near with compromised intermediate visual acuity. However, multifocal IOLs also produce deterioration in contrast sensitivity and associated with photic phenomena such as glare and halos. An extended depth of focus IOL has been designed to improve intermediate vision while maintaining good contrast sensitivity. Supraphobe infocals IOL is a new generation hydrophobic acrylic foldable IOL with yellow chromophore. Its overall diameter is 13 mm with optic size of 6 mm. Its anterior surface has a refractive pinhole design and posterior surface has a 360-degree enhanced edge design with aspheric optic, which prevents PCO formation. Its refractive index is 1.5045 and A constant 118.8. The aim of the study was to evaluate the visual outcomes of bilateral implantation of this lens in phacoemulsification, and second is to assess the patient satisfaction and incidence of photic phenomena following the implantation of EDOF lenses. In material and methods, patient with visually significant bilateral cataract with visual acuity less than 6/12 in better eye with axial length within a range of 21 to 25 mm, seeking independence from spectacles post-cataract surgery were included in the study. Patient with age less than 18 years, pre-existing refractive astigmatism of 0.75 diopter, any other ocular comorbidities which hamper the visual outcome, previous ocular surgeries, capsular or zonal abnormalities leading to post-operative IOL decentration or tilt were excluded from the study. All patients underwent a pre-operative ocular examination. Biometry was performed by IOL Master 700 and IOL power was calculated by using Barrett's formula. All surgeries were done by a single surgeon. All patients undergone phacoemulsification and a single piece suprafoveal in-focus IOL was implanted in capsular bag in all cases. Second eye surgery was done at a minimum interval of 2 weeks in every patient. Post-operative follow-up was done at day 1, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and 3 months follow-up. Each follow-up visual acuity, refraction, and dilated fundoscopy was done. A questionnaire based on National Eye Institute Refractive Error Quality of Life Instrument 42 was assessed to patient satisfaction regarding the vision, and spectacle independence and photic phenomena were performed in every cases. Data was analyzed by SSPSS. Continuous variable were expressed in mean and standard deviation. Paired t-test was used to compare between pre-operative and post-operative visual outcome. In results, the 70 eyes of 35 patients were included in the study with mean age of 54 years, with axial length within a range of 21 to 24 mm and IOP within 10 to 18 mm Hg. Post-operative mean monoocular uncorrected visual acuity improved from 0.92 to 0.13 at 3 months follow-up. Uncorrected near vision. This graph is showing the visual acuity at 3 months. The uncorrected visual acuity, distance visual acuity was 0.13. For near vision, it was 0.42. Intermediate vision was 0.34 logMAR at 3 months follow-up. According to patient satisfaction questionnaire, 89% of the patient did not require spectacle for distance work. 78% patient did not require spectacle for near work. Mild glare and halos were noted in 17% patient, moderate in 2% patient, and there was a decrease in contrast sensitivity was noted in 5.8% patient. There was no such intraoperative or postoperative complication were noted in any of the cases. The introduction of various multifocal IOLs have offered surgical option for correcting presbyopia in cataracts patient. The extended depth of focus IOL is based on the principle of creating an elongated focal points to enhance the range of vision or depth of focus. The Technis Symphony was the first FDA-approved EDOF lens in EDOF lens. However, the high cost of this lens is limiting factor for developing country. Comparable to this, suprafoveal in focus is a cost-effective. The visual outcome observed after implantation of EDOF was similar to other studies done with Technis Symphony. The Concreto study, largest multicentric study on Technis Symphony, shows the similar results, and another study by Pedrotti et al. Reported similar outcomes. Spectacles independence for distance was achieved in 89% of patients in current study, which was comparable to Concreto study and TTL et al. With spectacle independence in 92.1% and 96% of the patient respectively. More than 89% of the patient with suprafoveal focus achieved uncorrected near vision of n/6. Photic phenomena like glare and halos were noted in 17% of patients, which was slightly higher as compared to Technis Symphony IOL. So with this study, we can conclude that the visual acuity, contrast sensitivity, and photic phenomena were comparable to other studies done on other EDOF lenses. Safety and efficacy along with the cost effectiveness of suprafob in focus can be considered as a potential alternative to the currently available multifocal IOL. Thank you, sir. These are some references.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Priya.
Yes, sir.
The more than 89% of patients had the near vision of N6.
Yes, sir.
Did they have the distal vision of 6/6 or lesser vision?
Sir, all patients had corrected visual acuity of 6/6, but in 33 patients out of 35 patients, they have visual acuity of 6/9.
Okay.
Yes.
What was the post-op refractive error for the distance in such patients which were having the vision of N6?
Sir,
Were they left myopic intentionally?
Sir,
What was
they
the
have
target
left
refraction? Yeah. What was the target refraction when you aimed for the post-op period? What was the target refraction?
So target refraction was plus minus 0.75 diopter, within 0.75 diopter.
No, I think you are getting confused. It is not target the what you got. Sir is asking what you planned before the surgery.
Sir, we planned for imetropic.
Okay.
And what you achieved post-op in these IOLs?
Sir, in out of 35 patients, 2 patients have are myopic. Like they have a refractive error of 0.5 diopter, minus 0.5 diopter.
Why didn't you compare it with the other Indian IOLs as well? The other companies are also making the EDOF lenses.
Probably they are using only this lens. So
Okay.
I think we can move on to the next speaker.
Yes, judges, please.
You are just, I think Dr. Nidhi can give. We have done with 5 speakers, so Dr. Nidhi can give a talk now. Dr. Nidhi, are you ready?
Yes, sir, I am.
Go ahead. Dr. Nidhi was the winner of the best paper award in Jharkhand Ophthalmological Society, and she is going to speak on comparative analysis of visual outcomes of a new non-diffractive extended vision intraocular lens. Yeah, please start.
Good morning. Just a second, sir. Comparative analysis of visual outcomes of a new non-refractive extended vision intraocular lens. I have no financial disclosures. So standard monofocal IOLs can give good distance and corrected near vision, but poor intermediate vision. Multifocal IOLs can give spectacle independence for near, but can have decreased contrast sensitivity and photic phenomena. With the arising need for better intermediate vision, extended depth of focus IOLs have been introduced, but they can also be associated with photic phenomena. The Eyhance ICB00 IOL by Johnson & Johnson Vision Care is a newly developed monofocal IOL which has same features as the pre-existing ZCB00 IOL and is visually indistinguishable. The Technis ZCB00 IOL is a single-piece 6 mm biconvex hydrophilic acrylic monofocal IOL. It has an aspheric anterior surface and a negative spherical aberration of 0.27 micron. It is frosted continuous 360-degree posterior square edge. Additionally, the new IOL has a modified aspheric anterior surface of the optic, which creates a continuous power profile and aims at improving vision for intermediate tasks compared with the standard monofocal IOL and extend the depth of focus. It is based on the refractive technology without diffractive rings and without zones. So the purpose was to compare this new IOL Eyhance ICB00 with the standard monofocal IOL Technis ZCB00. The outcome measures were uncorrected distance, intermediate and near visual outcomes, contrast sensitivity, uniocular defocus curve, spectacle independence, and dysphotopsia profile at 90 days. It was a prospective non-randomized comparative study done by a single surgeon at a tertiary care hospital. Data was analyzed by SPSS software. We had 2 groups of 50 patients each. implanted with the new monofocal IOL ICB00 and the other group with the standard monofocal IOL ZCB00. The inclusion criteria were age 50 to 75 years, corneal astigmatism of equal to or less than 0.75 diopter, endothelial cell count more than 2000 cells per millimeter square. IOL was implanted between 20 and 23.5 diopter, and it was in the back. Cases excluded were history of previous trauma or intraocular surgery, having irregular astigmatism, corneal dystrophy or scar, history of glaucoma or intraocular inflammation, macular disease, retinopathy, neuro-ophthalmic diseases, or having any intra or postoperative complications. So the results, we did the uncorrected distance, intermediate and near visual acuity, and analyzed the data, and the group statistics and t-test for equality of means for uncorrected distance visual acuity and uncorrected near visual acuity showed comparable results between the two groups, and the difference was non-significant. While for uncorrected intermediate visual acuity at 60 centimeters, group 1 performed better. Contrast sensitivity was seen in photopic and mesopic conditions in both the groups at 7 and 90 days, and it was seen with increasing spatial frequencies. The MTF values for both the IOLs was decreasing. On further analysis, we found that in photopic and mesopic conditions, there was no statistical difference between both the groups at 77 and 90 days. Then the uniocular defocus curve was analyzed, and we saw that it is significantly better in the group 1 at 1, 1.5 and -2 diopters. This is a graph line chart for error bar showing that group 1 has a significantly better vision at versions of -1, -1.5 and -2, while it was non-significant at -2.5. The spectacle independence for intermediate distance was again, the questionnaire was asked, and it was found that in group 1, the spectacle independence was more, and which was statistically significant. Looking at the intermediate activity score for computer work, walking downstairs, reading labels, and night driving, it was seen that for intermediate activities, group 1 performed better. Looking at the dysphotopsia profile, both group 1 and group 2 patients were highly satisfied in intermediate nighttime activities. Both the groups had comparable halos and glare during night driving. So earlier when we presented this study, there were not sufficient reports to compare our study results. But with the recently published studies, our study shows comparable results for better uncorrected intermediate distance visual acuities, broader defocus curve, and more spectacle independence for intermediate distance activities for ICB00 IHANS versus the ZCB00 Tecnis IOL. A study by Offert et al. Showed similar comparable photic phenomena and contrast functions in both IOLs, similar to our study. A study by Vega et al. However, showed that MTF scores were lower for the ICB00 IOL at 2 mm pupils, but it was comparable at pupils more than 3.5 mm. The difference, however, was not significant in our study. So to conclude, implantation of non-diffractive extended vision IOL provided extended range of vision and low incidence of unwanted photic phenomena. The IHANS ICB00 IOL gives spectacle independence for intermediate distance with good visual acuity and optical quality for distance. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you so much, doctor. Can we have question answers, please?
Excuse me, what was the free paper? This was 551, some the number.
So could you repeat, please?
The free paper.
It's on the last page, sir. No, last page.
Okay. Okay, no problem. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
It's on the last page.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, do we have any questions for the doctor, please?
No, I think this was not supposed to be marked and no questions for this. That's what we were told. We can now move ahead to Dr. Bharti Kashyap, who's been waiting patiently, and he'll be talking on comparative analysis of 6 months visual outcome implantation behavior of 3 preloaded IOLs. Dr. Bharti Kashyap, please.
No, that has already been presented.
Sorry, Dr. DP Kashyap, sorry.
Good morning, everybody.
Please go ahead, sir. Good morning.
So I'll be presenting about the comparative analysis of the cost effectiveness and the vision, and especially in cases of it's going automatically. In the open loop haptic premium multifocal toric versus economic model of multiforic toric IOLs in Indian population. Our co-authors are Dr. Bharti and Dr. Nidhi. What is the purpose? The purpose of the study was to compare the cost, degree of IOL rotation, residual spherical equivalent, and astigmatism, binocular uncorrected distance and near vision, reading speed on MR Read app, patient satisfaction and bilateral implantation of premium open loop haptic multifocal toric IOLs versus the economic multifocal at 90 days in Indian population. The method was a non-randomized and comparative study which included 100 eyes of 50 patients each. The outcome parameters that was to be compared was the cost, the degree of IOL rotation, residual spherical and astigmatism, binocular uncorrected distance and near vision, binocular photopic and mesopic contrast sensitivity and photopic phenomena, and reading speed on MNR Read app at 90 days of follow-up. We included these cases that was between 50 to 75 years. Corneal endothelial cells count had to be greater than 2,000 cells per square millimeter, and power of IOL implanted were from 20 to 23.5, and rest were excluded for a better comparison, and it had to be in the capsular bag implantation. We excluded these cases which had a previous ocular trauma or intraocular surgery, irregular astigmatism, corneal dystrophy, history of glaucoma or intraocular inflammation, macular diseases of retinopathy, neuroophthalmic diseases, intraoperative or post-operative complications. So when we compare as for the genders, there was no gender discrimination. It had no difference. The age, they didn't matter. There was statistically no difference. And when we compare the pre-operative data of all the eyes, the parameters like a spherical equivalent, the K1, K2 readings, the axial length, there was statistically no difference pre-op. And when we saw the distant vision correction, corrected, it was comparable, and statistically there is no difference, and so was the near vision. It had no difference. Now the spherical equivalent, the residual astigmatism and IOL rotation, it had a difference of means of 0.4, 0.08, and 0.77. So it was also statistically no different. Contrast sensitivity in mesopic condition and photopic condition in 5 CPD, 10 CPD, and 15 CPD reveals that it was comparable in both the groups and statistically not significant. And this was in the mesopic condition, it was non-significant. So as for the photopic conditions are concerned, like glare, some had none, some had mild, and some had the severe, and they were from 70%, 20%, 10% respectively from non-mild to severe, and it was non-significant. And in the halos also, it was non-significant if compared with the two groups. If you go for the reading in the that chart app, so reading was for the equity size, and it was for the speed with the same size and the flow of the speed, flow of the reading, and again there was a maximum reading speed, that is MRS. The size was not a consideration. So with this app, when we compared both the groups, there was statistically no difference. And these were the result. It shows that statistically there is no difference when they were compared with the MNR Read app. So, but as far as the direct cost is concerned, there was a very heavy difference. So we conclude that despite of highly significant difference in cost, Both the premium and economical models of multifocal toric IOL showed comparable clinical effectiveness. And what it adds that economic model available in India for multifocal toric IOLs provide a much cheaper solution to a large group of middle-class Indian population suffering from cataract and astigmatism, which needs spectacle-free vision for distance and near vision. Thank you very much. I'm proud to be Indian. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. May I request our judges if you would like to ask something?
What are the toric multifocal torics you have used in the study?
Two types, sir. One is Alcon type and one is biotech type.
Okay, biotech trifocal.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So can we invite the next presenter for the next paper, please?
Actually, Dr. Jayagopal has put in a request. He has another presentation somewhere else. So if it's okay with everybody, can we have Dr. Jayagopal next, please?
Yes, sir. We can go ahead.
He'll be speaking on future revolution of IOL power calculation, artificial intelligence-based algorithm. Dr. Jayagopal, please. Share your screen, please. Are you there, Dr. Jayagopal? You were just messaging.
Yeah, Dr. Jayagopal is very much here. Sir, if you can unmute your mic.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
Okay. My paper is the future evolution of IOL power calculation. It is based on the artificial intelligence-based algorithm. The study is totally self-dependent, self-financed, not supported by any research grant. The purpose of this retrospective study is to compare the accuracy of widely used IOL power formula, namely the LADA Super and HEAL RBF, that is artificial intelligence-based formula. Next, Barrett Universal Holiday 2, Holiday 1, and OfferQ and the HISES and ISRKT formula are the regulation formulas. When we upload the data of the patient, artificial intelligence-based formula finds distinct pattern in apparently random clouds of data points already created by large number of cases. Thus, it is based on the pattern recognition of artificial intelligence. It is purely data-driven and free from limitation of the expected lens position and free from the limitation inherent to the standard formula. It is adaptive, dynamic, and constantly evolving. Yes, in this retrospective study, detail of 267 patients were collected from our hospital who had undergone cataract extraction IOL implantation from January 2019 and March 2020. We include 379 eyes from 234 patients based on the inclusion and exclusion criteria of preoperative investigation includes IOL master 700 readings. That includes axial length, K readings, lens thickness, white to white, ACD, along with the complete examination of the eye. Patients are grouped in the term of axial length. Group 1 is the axial length more than 24.5. Group 2 is between the 21.5 and 24.5. Group 3 is below 21.5. After 1 month post-op, measurements are done by the same profession and same autorefractometer for best corrected visual acuity, post-refractive actual dioptric power, and the number of dioptric error. These are the inclusion and exclusion criteria of my study. This is the Excel data sheet of my study. For statistical analysis, SPSS software is used. Mean were shown as along with the standard deviation. Refractive mean numerical error, mean absolute error of the IOL formula at different axial length groups were calculated and compared. Refractive error absolute value by percentage of each formula is calculated at 0.25, 0.51, and 2 diopters. Mean absolute error is used as the indicator for the IOL formula prediction accuracy. Small as standard deviation of mean absolute error shows the accuracy of prediction error is good. Centroid residual astigmatism prediction error are calculated for each method for toric IOLs. Here in this study, it is 26 cases. These are demographic and pre-operative biometric ocular parameters of the patient. Now, from the data, we calculate the mean numerical error. Here it is seen that Hill RBF and LADA super formula gives them minimum numerical error, so they are better. Similarly, if you calculate the mean absolute error, here again the Hill RBF and LADA super formula gives the better results. If we analyze the sensitivity of the formula prediction at 0.25, 0.51, and 1 diopter, here again the LADA super formula and Hill RBF gives the minimal post-operative error with more eyes with 0.5 of the spherical equivalent. This table showing the mean numerical error and mean absolute error and percentage of eye of absolute refractive error at 0.25, 0.5, and 2 diopters of formula. Here, the mean absolute error is smallest for LADA super formula, followed by the Hill RBF. So these two formulas are very good. For the extremes of eye, LADA super formula is better than the other formula because here again the mean absolute error is smallest for both the extreme eyes, like long eyes and short eyes. Toric calculator and post-LASIK calculator are yet to come in the LADA super formula. For post-operative LASIK calculation, no artificial intelligence formula is till now. For toric calculation, we use LADA super formula for the spherical part and Barrett toric calculator as a cylinder part. Issue of astigmatism can be compared in the centroid residual astigmatism error. This slide shows the centroid error in the prediction residual astigmatism for each method of calculation divided into with the rule and against the rule. Here, the combination of LADA super formula along with the Barrett toric calculator gives the excellent result. The same thing is shown in the double angle plot. There's the red circle in the center shows the LADA super formula along with the Barrett toric calculator gives the minimum error, and thus they are very good. Now to conclude, the artificial intelligence formula is totally data driven based on the pattern recognition without estimating the expected lens position. It is continuously evolving and thus accuracy above 90%. Among them, the LADA super formula is better as a single answer for all IOL calculation query. There is no outbound limitation as in Hill RBF. It incorporates the sweet spots of many existing formula into one single formula. LADA super formula is the grandmaster of biometry, and artificial intelligence base is the game changer for IOL power calculation. Thank you. Thank you for your patience here.
Thank you, Doctor. You finished well in time. Do we have any questions for Doctor? Okay, so we can invite our next speaker to present the paper. May I request the judges to do the needful, please?
Can we request the next speaker? Effective regional anesthesia in cataract surgery. Why have pain with peribulbar block? By Dr. Uma Maheshwari. Dr. Uma, are you here?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir. I'm here.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Uma Maheshwari. I'm here to present a research article on effective regional anesthesia and cataract surgery. Why have pain with peribulbar block? There's no financial interest. Anesthesia care for ophthalmic surgical procedures balances goals of patient comfort with safety and an optimal outcome in a highly cost-conscious environment. The ideal anesthesia for a cataract surgery would be one that provides adequate pain relief during surgery and postoperatively and be easy to administer and minimal complications. It is necessary to make the anesthetic technique patient-friendly, safe, effective, and economically feasible. A variety of local anesthetic techniques have been developed and refined. Retrobulbar anesthesia was initially used for cataract extraction, which was gradually replaced by peribulbar anesthesia, which is the most popular technique in the previous decade. Both techniques can have serious needle-related complications such as retrobulbar hemorrhage, optic nerve injury, and globe perforation. Subtenuous anesthesia is gaining popularity as it provides quicker onset of anesthesia, better analgesia, and faster patient rehabilitation. Aim of my study was to compare the safety and efficacy of Subtenons over peribulbar block to provide an optimal anesthesia for cataract surgery by phacoemulsification. My inclusion criteria were patient aged above 35 years with uncomplicated cataract, admitted for elective phacoemulsification in the Department of Ophthalmology in a tertiary care center. Exclusion criteria were patient below 35 years of age, traumatic or complicated cataract, patient with bleeding disorders, patient with impaired mental status, patients refusing local anesthesia, patients having allergic to local anesthetic drugs, and one-eyed patient. An observational comparative study was conducted among 158 patients who underwent cataract surgery by phaco and regional anesthesia. The study was conducted in a tertiary care center. After obtaining approval from the Institutional Ethics Committee, the period of study was 1 year. A complete ophthalmic examination, including best corrected visual acuity, cataract grading, and dilated fundus evaluation was done for all patients. Preoperative evaluation and anesthetic fitness were obtained. The total sample size was 158, among which 79 patients received peribulbar anesthesia, 79 received Subtenons anesthesia. The parameters which were analyzed were time of onset of ocular akinesia, analgesia at various intervals, minor complications such as chemosis and subconjunctival hemorrhage. The pain score was assessed during administration of anesthetic drug intraoperatively and postoperatively using a 11-point numerical pain reporting scale. The degree of pain was again divided into no pain had a grade of 0, mild pain had grade 1 to 2, moderate pain had grade 3 to 4, and severe pain had grade more than 5. Statistical analysis for descriptive statistics, percentage mean and standard deviations were used. For inferential statistics, chi-squared independent t-test were used. P-value less than 0.5 was taken as statistically significant. Among 158 patients, 79 had received peribulbar anesthesia, 79 had received Subtenons anesthesia. All were operated by the same surgeon. The mean age in the peribulbar and the Subtenons anesthesia group was 65.54 and 64.23 respectively. Gender distribution in peribulbar group, male were 40, female were 39. In Subtenons group, male were 38, female were 41. The distribution of study population was similar in both the groups with respect to age and gender. Analgesia assessment of Subtenons anesthesia had a low pain score in which 85% had no pain during administration, as you could see in the graph in the peribulbar group, whereas 65% had moderate pain during administration, which is statistically significant with a p-value of less than 0.001. This is a tabular column showing the analgesia which was achieved between both the technique during administration intraoperatively and postoperatively. Analgesia during and post-surgery was similar in both techniques, whereas during administration they had a significant difference. Ocular akinesia was achieved faster with Subtenons block, average time of onset being 45 seconds. In peribulbar block, took a longer time to achieve ocular akinesia, with a statistically significant difference of p-value less than 0.001. The incidence of minor complications such as chemosis and subconjunctival hemorrhage were more in Subtenons technique. This is a tabular column showing the complications such as chemosis. As you could see, only 31.6% of patients had chemosis in peribulbar group, whereas in 60.7% of patients had chemosis in Subtenons anesthesia. Similarly, subconjunctival hemorrhage was more in Subtenons anesthesia with 26.6% of patients. Safer anesthetic techniques had led to the introduction of peribulbar anesthesia and more recently topical anesthesia. In this study, we compared the efficacy of Subtenons over peribulbar anesthesia. In our study, peribulbar anesthesia had ranked higher in pain score, wherein Subtenons block had a low pain score, and also patients were more comfortable during administration as they were unaware of the injection being given. Analgesia during and post-surgery were comparable in both techniques. This observation on analgesia was supported by studies such as Parker et al. And Data et al. In our study, ocular akinesia was achieved faster in Subtenons group compared to peribulbar group. Briggs et al. Also concluded that the time interval between the administration of anesthesia and commencement of surgery was significantly less in Subtenons block when compared to peribulbar block. Incidence of minor complications such as chemosis and subconjunctival hemorrhage were more with Subtenons anesthesia. Subtenons anesthesia is more comfortable to conclude. Subtenons anesthesia is more comfortable on administration and also reduces the interval between administration of anesthesia and surgery. The ease of administration and patient comfort intraoperatively also makes Subtenons anesthesia a preferred choice over topical anesthesia for the surgeon. It also has reduced risk of major complications such as scleral perforation, retrobulbar hemorrhage, optic nerve injury, and injection of anesthetic solution in the subarachnoid space as no sharp instrument is passed into the orbit. Subtenons anesthesia is safe, effective, and more comfortable alternative technique for phacosurgery. These are my references pertaining to my study. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor, for finishing it in a tremendous speed. May I now request our judges if you have any questions for her? Thank you.
How much amount of anesthesia did you give in each? Like peribulbar, how much did you inject, and how much did you inject in
So both were 5 ml, sir. 5 ml of
5 ml in Subtenon.
Subtenons. It was 3 ml. In this, it was 5 ml, sir.
Okay.
What was the drug given in peribulbar anesthesia? Was it xylocaine or mixed with the sensitive?
Yes, sir. It was xylocaine, lignocaine mixed with hyaluronidase with bupivacaine, sir.
What was the ratio of mixture of those drugs?
3 ml plus 2 ml, sir.
3 ml is xylocaine. Was it with the adrenaline or without adrenaline?
With adrenaline, sir.
In every patient, you used it with adrenaline. In hypertensive and cardiac patients as well.
In cardiac patients, it was without adrenaline. Because high risk patients, without adrenaline. So,
Dr. Uma,
yes, sir.
what is the type of needle used in Saptino?
Saptinones, it was
Special cannula?
Stevens cannula, sir.
All right, so if you don't have any further questions, can we please invite the next paper presenter, please?
So the next paper will be analysis of factors predicting the visual outcome in acute post-cataract surgery endophthalmitis by Dr. Tharani Shandamal.
Okay. Yes, sir. So,
yeah, please share the screen.
is my screen visible, sir?
Yeah, it is. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. I'll be presenting a paper on analysis of factors predicting the visual outcome in acute post-cataract surgery endophthalmitis. Post-operative endophthalmitis is a dreaded complication of cataract surgery. It adversely affects the visual outcome. The incidence ranges from 0.02 to 0.26%. Although it has declined in the recent years due to sterile precautions, rapid and precise identification of microorganisms, and advanced treatment modalities, the final visual outcome still remains poor. So the aim of my study is to assess the factors which can predict the visual outcome in patients with acute post-cataract surgery endophthalmitis. We conducted a prospective analytical study at Aravinda Hospital, Madurai between Jan 2017 and June 2018. We included consecutive patients who presented with clinical signs and symptoms of endophthalmitis who presented within 6 weeks of cataract surgery. Those who presented with features of endophthalmitis secondary to other surgical procedures, traumatic endogenous endophthalmitis, toxic anterior segment syndrome, and patients with poorly controlled diabetes were excluded from our study. We collected the baseline demographic details and surgical details from the medical records. We admitted all the patients and all of them underwent an immediate diagnostic aqueous tap or vitreous tap or primary core vitrectomy. We collected the undiluted vitreous samples and sent them for gram stain, KOH, cultured in blood agar, sabourated agar, thioglycolate broth, and brain heart infusion broth. All patients received topical moxifloxacin or topical voriconazole in suspected fungal infection, and intravitreal injection of vancomycin and ceftazidime was given for all patients, and dexamethasone in selected patients. Based on the culture report, specific antibiotics were given during repeat intravitreal injection or vitrectomy. Those who worsened with intravitreal antibiotics underwent core vitrectomy. Best corrected visual acuity was tested using Snellen's chart at discharge at first month and third month. Visual acuity at third month follow-up was considered as final visual outcome. Those with a vision with more than 612 was considered as good outcome, and less than 660 was considered to have poor outcome. 60 patients were included in our study with a mean age of 61.1 years. We had 15 patients with phacoemulsification, 43 had underwent SACS, and 2 had underwent ECCE. The operating surgeons included both trainees as well as experts. Duration of surgery was noted to be less than 15 minutes in around 73% of the patients. Intraoperative complications were noted in 13 patients, of which 6 had posterior capsular rupture with vitreous disturbance. On the day of presentation, 3 patients had scleral wound infiltration, 5 had corneal infiltrate, and 2 had melted cornea. Primary core vitrectomy was done for 7 patients because of poor media clarity and poor vision at presentation. These were my culture results. 41 patients were culture negative and 19 were culture positive. Among them, 11 patients showed the presence of coagulase negative staphylococci, and the remaining were Pseudomonas, streptococci, fungi, Delphia acidovorans, and Citrobacter cocer. This picture depicts the trend in visual acuity. With more number of we had 162 hand movements vision in more number of patients in this group at admission, whereas the trend has improved with more number of patients in 6.6 to 6.18 groups at first month and third month follow-up. So these were the baseline characteristics which we assessed and their association with good visual outcome as well as poor visual outcome: age, gender, diabetes, type of surgery, intraoperative complications, time of presentation, the presenting clinical features, as well as the microbiological culture and the intervention done. So univariate result analysis results have shown that age less than 65 years, male gender, absent FM or IOL, absent hypopyon, and diabetes had a good outcome, whereas presenting visual acuity of less than 660, poor media clarity, and negative culture were associated with poor outcome. When we did a multivariate logistic regression analysis, we found that three factors independently predicted the good visual outcome. Absent hypopyon had 19 times higher chance of getting good visual outcome. Absent fibrillary membrane of the IOL had 15 times higher chance, and non-diabetics had a significant inverse association with good visual outcome. We had a negative microbiological culture as the only factor predicting the poor visual outcome, which had they had a 18 times higher chance of getting good poor visual outcome. Other studies where they analyzed the association of clinical picture with the visual outcome. EVA study has shown that EVA study and Tara Prasad et al. Study has shown that vision at presentation was significantly associated with the visual outcome. So to conclude, absence of hypopyon and fibrin or IOL was significantly associated with good visual outcome. Diabetic patients with good glycemic control can have good visual outcome. Negative culture in endophthalmitis is associated with poor visual outcome. So these patients should be treated aggressively, and absence of infection doesn't mean there is no organism. Newer methods need to be adapted to find the causative organism. The strength of my study is that we have analyzed extensive list of prognostic factors, and we've included ECC, SACS as well as phacoemulsification. The limitation is that we have small and we have used only conventional culture methods to identify the organisms. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. If we have any questions for her, please.
Dr. Tarni, what is the most common organism identified in your study? And what is the correlation between the type of organism and the visual outcome?
Sir, actually, only 19 patients were. Among them, 11 we had coagulase negative staphylococcus. The visual outcome in coagulase negative staphylococcus patients was more than 624, sir. They were having a good visual outcome. Only those with, we had 2 patients with pseudomonas who had poor outcomes, sir.
We have studied that correlation.
Yes, sir. That
type and the outcome.
Yes, sir. That was another analysis.
Dr. Charlie, did you find any correlation between the type of incision, clear corneal, scleral, and the outcome, final outcome?
Sir, we couldn't find any significant difference, sir. We studied that also.
Okay.
And did you find any reason for these cases? From where it came?
Sir,
during any of the retrospective analysis? The source of infection.
Sir, that was not a part, sir. We didn't find the cause.
Okay.
How many number of patients had undergone vitrectomy in such patients? How many number of patients had undergone vitrectomy in the?
Undergone?
Vitrectomy.
Sir, 7 patients underwent primary vitrectomy, sir. Then some 10 patients underwent post intravitreal. They didn't improve and they went for secondary core vitrectomy, sir.
Post intravitreal, how many days you wait for the vitrectomy?
Sir, we waited for 48 hours, sir. We first intravitreal injection we give, and then we wait for 24 hours. We'll just observe for 24 to 48 hours. If he's improving, then second, if he's improving, then we'll go for a repeat intravitreal. If he's not improving, then we'll go for core vitrectomy, sir. Or if he's worsening also.
What was your protocol of drugs for intravitreal? Was it antibiotics only or with that DEXA as well, intravitreal DEXA?
Sir, if there is severe inflammation and if we did not suspect any fungal infection, then only we'll go for dexamethasone, sir. Like like hazy media, we can see the fundus, but the details are not so clear. Then we'll give dexamethasone only in selected cases, sir, if they have severe inflammation. But no, if we suspect fungal infection, we are not giving, sir. Not in all cases, only in selected cases.
Sir, we need to go to the next presenter, please.
Okay, so now we have the last presentation of the day. That is Dr. Mahendrakar Dinkar, and he is going to talk about the comparison of surgical time of modified sutured scleral fixation intraocular lens with the standard technique.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Aniruddha Mahendrakar from Mumbai. I have no financial disclosures. So though glued intraocular lens and newer methods have come up significantly, however, still sutured scleral fixation of intraocular lens remains the gold standard. Scleral fixated sutured intraocular lens is a very important procedure, and here we have called it the standard SFIL. Standard SFIL procedure is mostly lengthy. Shortening it will definitely improve the results by reducing the tissue trauma and also increasing patient comfort. So the aim of the study is to compare surgical time of modified sutured scleral fixation of intraocular lens with this standard technique. In the methods, the conjunctival and scleral flaps are made 180 degrees apart, similar to the standard method, along with vitrectomy wherever necessary. The straight needle in the tenoprolene is passed under the scleral flaps through the scleral blade, similar to the standard method. However, here it is docked in the 26G needle through the main wound, unlike the standard method where the 26G needle comes from the 180 degrees opposite scleral bed. After the needle is brought through the main wound, it is passed through the eyelet of the intraocular lens. The needle itself, it's docked again in the 26G needle, which has been passed under the same scleral flap, and the suture is tied there. Similar steps are performed on the other side, whereas in the standard method, the two sutures, there are double pass, and the two sutures which are in the anterior chamber are pulled out of the main wound, cut, and then they are passed through the eyelets and tied to each of the eyelets of the haptic. So this is the photograph wherein we have passed, this is the operative photograph wherein we have passed the needle through the scleral bed out of the main wound. And then this needle is passed through the eyelets of the haptic, and it is passed twice so that it does not lose. There is no knot which is tied there. Then the needle is passed again through the main wound and docked into this 26 gauge needle, which is coming from the same scleral bed. So we have to be careful that the going haptic, which is going on the right side, should be the curved ?1. Also, when we are going inside, we have to be careful that we are not taking a bite of the scleral or the corneal flaps there. So our study was 25 eyes of 23 patients. 12 eyes had undergone the standard method and 13 had undergone the modified method. Male to female ratio was 11 to 13. Post-operatively, all standard post-op follow-up care was done by a single surgeon in the same outpatient setup. Routine slit lamp, intraocular pressure, visual acuity, and fundus examination, as well as the post-op medicines were standard and similar. None of the patients selected had diabetes or hypertension. The average age was 59 years, and all surgeries were performed by the same surgeon in the same setup. A follow-up of 6 months was performed. The time required for the standard technique was approximately, on an average, 37.5, that is 37 minutes 30 seconds, and for modified method it was 24 minutes. Thus, the surgical time was reduced by approximately 13.5 minutes compared to the standard scleral fixation steps by the same surgeon. So we can see a significant reduction in the surgical time. The intraocular pressure changes were similar in both groups. Corneal edema was slightly more in the standard group compared to the modified group, but not statistically significant. So post-operatively, all the scleral fixated eyes were, both groups were well-centered and stable. There was not significant difference in the corneal edema, as we said, or inflammatory reaction between the two groups. However, the modified method does surely shorten the surgical time. However, both the procedures are actually equally good. However, shorter time will in turn definitely lead to reduced tissue trauma, and this will further improve the surgical outcome. However, we will need more studies. So the limitations were a very small sample size. Also, the duration follow-up was short, and it was a non-randomized nor a double-blind controlled study. So in conclusion, a simple modification in the surgical steps helps in reducing the surgical time, which in turn helps in reducing the surgical trauma and hopefully improving the results. References, and thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Do we have any questions for him? Yeah, any questions for the doctor?
Only one suggestion is he could have shown a short video
Yes,
during
sir.
the presentation that would have, helped us see the procedure.
Thanks for the suggestion, sir. I will note it.
So now may I? Yes, sir. Somebody was saying. Okay, so may I request our judges to, if they would like, they can conclude the session here.
Yes, we can go ahead. So thus we come to the conclusion of this session on Parson Hall on free paper presentation on cataract surgery. Thank you very much for all the co-judges and all the participants for making this a very good session. Thank you very much.
And thanks to all the
Thank you.
speakers for sticking to time. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
the
sir.
Ophthalmic Society. Thank you very much.
Thank you.